everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working in this book called Watercolor with Me in the Forest by Dana Fox. I've got a flip through of this book on my channel and I will link the video down below if you would like to have a closer look. I'm using a round brush and I think it's a size 6 and only using 3 colors. I'm using my Schmincke palette and we're using burnt umber, ivory black and sap green. If you don't have those exact colors, you can pick something that's very similar to it, or you can mix those colors if that is something that you would like to give a go, which I had to do because funny enough I did not have burnt umber. So I used ultramarine and cadmium red light to get a burnt umber. Now, if you're really into mixing colors, I think the accurate way to actually do it is to use ultramarine and like an orange, which I again don't really use orange much, so I don't have that color in my palette. But the cadmium red light, if I look at it very closely, I can definitely see that it's got orange hues in it, and that worked perfectly for me. You can also use a red and a yellow to create an orange and then mix that with the ultramarine finest. The quantities I can't really tell you exactly. I've just played around till I got the closest color to burnt umber that I could get. So step 1 was to just wet the belly of the bird with clean water until the paper is damp but not soaking wet. And then I diluted my burnt umber and I just started dropping some color in there. The color is supposed to flow because we're doing the wet on wet technique here. But unfortunately my color just didn't end up flowing. So I just used my brush and manipulated the color to where I would like it to be. I think maybe I didn't put enough water in, but then on the other hand, when I started doing the bird's head and wing and tail, I added more water and I used ivory black there. I still didn't get the color to move that much. So again, I'm just using my brush and manipulating it to where I would like it to be. I don't know if I'm using the technique wrong or maybe it's just the paper that I'm working on, which by the way, the paper is actually very lovely and it's watercolor paper, which really reacted well to the colors that I'm adding. That was the only thing that I noticed that I didn't get going. With the leaves, I also just wet the paper with some clean water and then I added, we're supposed to add sap green according to the author's instruction, but I don't have sap green. I do have a May green, which is very close to the sap green, not exactly, but that was completely fine with me and I started adding that in. It's very important to note that between these layers I am waiting for things to dry, especially when I did the belly and the top part of the bird, because if both of those areas are wet, the colors will just be mixing together and that's not the look that I'm going for. So I did wait for the belly to be completely dry before I did the top part of the bird. Right now, I'm just adding in the finer details. I'm using exactly the same colors that I used in those areas. The only difference is I am not diluting it. I'm using the colors straight from there to get those crisp, clear lines. With the bird's belly, I didn't exactly get those crisp and clear lines that I was looking for. I think the belly part was just still a little damp and you can see the watercolor feathering out. Later on, I'm going to use the sap green yet again to do the details on the leaves, and I've got the same problem. It starts feathering out and it's just not as clear as I would like it to be. If you love that look, it's completely fine, you can leave it, but I really wanted them to stand out. So I will later, when everything's completely dry, you'll see me going back in and just tightening up those lines. I think it is very important with this book to follow the author's instructions because that's the way that you're going to learn and that's how the book's meant to be. But also, I do encourage you to take your own artistic liberties and to change up the color slightly if you would like to, or add an extra step in there that she maybe didn't mention to go back and make areas a little bit darker. Just continue working with it until you're happy with the result. It doesn't have to look exactly like hers. It can be a little bit different. That's completely fine. So I encourage you really to follow your gut feeling and just go in and do the things that you also feel that needs to be done to this whole painting process. Now, with the branch, you're also supposed to use the burnt umber, but I don't want the branch to really mix in too much with its belly. I want you to be able to distinguish between those two areas. So with my burnt umber, I'm just doing a darker application by adding less water and just going back in and adding more color. When I went the second time to mix burnt umber, I actually also used a different combination. I have a sepia brown in my palette, which looks very much like burnt umber, but it's more dull. So to make the sepia brown a little bit richer, I used again that cadmium red light and added a bit of it in. And I ended up getting, again, a beautiful dark, rich burnt umber. And I think if I have to mix burnt umber again, it's more difficult to use the ultramarine finest and then your orange or your red to get to that color, because there's a very fine line where you sometimes end up getting more of a purple color, and then you have to add in more of a certain color to try and get it back to that brown. With the sepia brown and the cadmium red light, it was so much easier to get that look that I wanted to achieve, and that's what I used for the branch, which I'm very happy with. Now right at the end, I'm just going back in and clearing up those details and putting in those finer lines. I really hope that you have enjoyed this whole process. As I've said previously, I'm not a professional at this at all. I'm still learning as I'm going, and I feel that's just a fun way of doing it, is to just dive in and give it a go. We learn by making mistakes and playing around. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've got a great week ahead of you, and take care. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.